Following is a sample chapter from the book Land of Light and Dark by Joshua Ebel, available now.
Chapter 12. Pirates. Boom! My ears rang out as a cannonball shot by my shoulder. I instinctively dove for the ground. My heart was pounding. My ears were ringing. I couldn't breathe as gun smoke filled the cabin. My head was spinning as I tried to think. Thinking? That was impossible. I'm going to die here. Die. Me, a 13-year-old middle schooler, dead, here, on the sea, by pirates. Pirates? My head was reeling as my brain was struggling to catch up. It was like I was thinking one word at a time. I had to shake it off. Can't think, only react. Where is Lulu? She was under me. Thankfully, I caught myself before I squished poor Lulu. It would have been hilarious if it wasn't for any other situation, because suddenly I opened my eyes and there was a chipmunk on her back looking at me. I sprang up. My own safety was number one concern. Number two is my brother. I looked out the porthole, and like in slow motion, I saw a cannonball head right towards my brother. Thankfully, in a blink of an eye, the force field bubble appeared as my brother grasped the hilt of the sorcerer's sword. Phew! I sighed a sigh of relief. As I watched, I drew my dagger just in case. The pirates fired quickly, but their aim was all over the place. You could tell Kaipo and Salamander was experienced because more of their shots landed crucial hits, but our ship was taking damage too. I was scared we may sink before it was all said and done. "Miss Mika, look!" cried Lulu. I glanced over, not wanting to take my eyes off the action for long. Lulu was standing next to the hole the cannonball ripped through. To my astonishment, the hole was closing. How could that be? I wondered. "Didn't Lakey mention about the ship being blessed by fairies?" Lulu asked. I thought back when we first got on the turquoise ship. I did have a flashback to him saying that now, but I thought that was all talk. I remember him saying something about it being unsinkable. "I hear the fairies of the southern swamp had some powerful magic, but I never imagined this. They are known to have a turquoise glow to their magic, but I never could imagine..." She left that last bit linger. "So maybe we won't sink?" I thought. Perhaps we can outlast them after all. Suddenly, the cannon stopped. What's happening? I wondered. Surely they haven't gave up. Unfortunately, I immediately got my answer as hooks got thrown onto our ship. They were climbing aboard? Lakey came charging in with his cutlass sword being drawn to help the others. The three experienced seamen cut as many ropes as they could to try to prevent a boarding, but after a while, it was inevitable. Salamander was the largest of the group. He reminded me of the animated version of Maui. He wasn't fat, but stocky, broad shoulders and long, cold black curly hair, and covered in tattoos. He barreled through and tackled several pirates as they boarded. Kaipo was a bit shorter and smaller out of the three, but what he lacked in height, he made up in speed. With a sword in each hand, he would attack some of the uggles on one side, then spring on a railing and fight some more on the other side. Escanor was holding his own too. Meanwhile, I frantically searched for my brother. I spotted him behind some crates along with Jonathan. He had the hilt to protect him, but he really needed a weapon too. My anxiety couldn't allow me to watch any longer. I had to help. "What are you doing?" Lulu asked, noticing my hand at the door. "If I'm going to die, I might as well go down fighting," I told her, then took off. I needed to help, but I need to be smart about it too. "Stay calm and focus," I told myself, taking a breath. So I ducked down behind some crates. From my vantage point back in the cabin, I was able to observe a floor plan of sorts, having a slight bird's eye view, so I kind of knew where I was heading. Good thing Lakey's cabin was on a deck above the main deck of the ship. Suddenly, feet ran past. I froze as I tried to catch my breath. I quietly snuck around some crates. An Uggle pirate had my brother and Jonathan cornered. It was now or never. So without thinking, I charged and yelled with all my might. I took my dagger and aimed for his head. I opened my eyes to see the Uggle fall dead. I guess I had closed my eyes on instinct. I got one? "Hey, I got one!" I yelled excitedly. "What are you doing, Mika?" Wolf asked. "Saving your ass," I said, full of all the confidence in the world. "You should be back in the cabin," he said. "I'm not a child," I told him, really starting to feel the adrenaline kicking in. I felt like I could fight them all. Suddenly, he looked over my shoulder. "Mika, behind you!" he yelled. I spun around right as another Uggle came towards me. I leaped back. Currently, I was unarmed as my dagger was still in the dead one at the moment. But as he stepped forward, an arrow flew into his eye. The creature dropped to his knees in pain. Another one followed, hitting him in the throat. He made a terrible gurgling sound before he died. I looked up to see Lulu standing on the crates. She smiled and said, "Glad to have been a help after all." I smiled to her. I was thankful she came. Her arrows were about a third of the size of a normal arrow, but they were needle sharp, and Lulu was deadly accurate with them. Wolf got a sword off the dead Uggle, and I grabbed my dagger. I felt pretty amazing wiping the blood of my enemies off. We came charging into where the others were. "Hey, you over there!" I yelled to the pirate Lakey was fighting. I knew I wasn't much on a one-on-one fight now that I wouldn't have the element of surprise on my side. But perhaps I can be a distraction to help Lakey. It seemed to work because right as the pirate looked up, Lakey charged and hit his opponent with his sword, but kept going and rammed him backwards off the ledge, and he flew into the water. "My lady," he said to me, tipping his hat. I couldn't help but to blush a little. Just then, I noticed things go eerily quiet. I looked around. Dead Uggles covered the ship. So, did we win? I thought. The opposing ship just floated there. I knew better than to get my hopes up. After a while, a large Uggle with a patchy beard and a captain's hat appeared. He stepped toward the side we were on from his ship. He yelled out, "I wish to speak to the captain." After a moment, Lakey approached. "That would be me," he said. "We simply want the enchanted weapon," cried the captain. Lakey glanced around. "We have nothing of the sort here." I knew that he was aware of the sword Wolf carried, so clearly he knew how important it was and why we had to protect it at all costs.
Lies, snarled the Uggle captain. We saw its light being used during the battle.
Crap, he's right. When they shot the cannonball at Wolf, it bounced off his force field.
I'm afraid my crew, my ship, and all that we have isn't up for anyone to take,
he yelled back with a smile. I wish I had his confidence. I knew the Uggle captain wouldn't concede that easily. As I thought, the captain snapped his fingers, and a smaller, stockier Uggle, which stepped beside of him, held out a small chest. Then that Uggle unlatched the chest he was holding, and inside there was a golden conch shell covered in fine jewels.
Here I possess the golden shell of Nabui. One blow from this, and it'll call the sea dragon from the depths, and he'll kill you all, he yelled.
Lakey laughed.
Now I know you're lying,
he said.
The golden conch is stuff of old travelers' tales from drunk sailors. It was lost at sea 1,000 years ago. Besides, if for some reason you managed to find the wrecked Atlantic ship at the bottom of the ocean, if that really was the shell of Nabui, you would never blow it. The sea dragon will not only kill us, but you and every ship within 100 miles of here. Even the cliff goblins of the northern Bath would be flushed out and devoured one by one,
Lakey shouted.
Uggles and goblins have no fear. Our numbers are great, so we fear nothing,
the Uggle captain said.
You have 5 minutes. Turn over the sorcerer's sword or face certain death,
he told us. I tried to be brave and trust Lakey's logic. Our group gathered as to discuss what the Uggle captain just said. So, sea dragon. What's a sea dragon? I asked.
I only know what the legends say, he told us.
Laughing, he looked over his shoulder as if we were football players, huddled around deciding what play to make.
I mean, all sailors heard the tales, he said. Like I told him, long ago, dragons ruled the skies, normally harmlessly unless awakened by some brainless treasure hunter. Then they'll terrorize the locals for a while before hibernating as they do.
It was a very nonchalant thing to say, but nothing I didn't expect. Just found it odd in that moment that there was nothing odd about it. I mean, in this world, of course dragons are a real thing. He went on.
Well, they say deep in the ocean lives the sea dragon. Imagine a dragon, except his wings are for swimming at lightning speeds instead of flying, and instead of breathing fire, he can squirt boiling water that can burn your face off. Kept as a pet for the king of Atlantis, he used his golden conch to control the beast, and he'd even used him as entertainment for his lavish guests. The story doesn't go into details, but supposedly there are holes in the shell that allow it to play out different sounds that the dragon was trained to follow. After the island sunk into the ocean, the creature along with the shell got buried at the ocean's depths, never again found, he said. We all looked at each other bewildered. Once again he smiled and shrugged. So that thing has to be a fake. There's no way that's the real conch of Nabui.
After a few moments of discussion, we came to the conclusion that A, we're not giving up the sword, it's too important, and B, there's nothing to stop them blowing the horn, no matter what we decide.
Time's up, Captain. What have you decided?
Yelled the Uggle pirate. Without missing a beat, Lakey stood defiantly, laughed, and said,
We call your bluff. You have a pathetic replica, he said with one hand on his hip and finger pointing, mocking the scoundrel. Now if you excuse me, you may outgun us, but my ship can repair itself unlike your rat-infested vessel. Currently, I have 2 guns with chain shots pointed directly at your mast, and at this range, they dare not miss. So allow us to carry on, or have your ship crippled completely.
Lakey stood in complete confidence, looking the menace dead in his eyes. If his next words were, "Will you marry me, Mika?" I would have agreed on the spot. The pirate opposition across from us wasn't as easily swooned. In fact, if his complexion wasn't so green, I'll swear he turned red. The beast had pure fury in his eyes.
How dare you mock us? You humans think you're so better than us because you spend all your days in the sun. Well, now it's time to die,
he yelled. And he spun around and snatched the horn from his companion and blew it with all his might. As he blew it, the sound made such an echo that I didn't think was possible on the open seas. I ducked and had to cover my ears. After what I assumed was several minutes of silence, Lakey shook off the moment. I wish I could say he spoke again with the same confidence as before, but I could tell there was a certain amount of fear in his eyes.
Ha! You see, said Lakey. Fake. Now you tell Azrael and whatever con artist that sold you that heap of junk that we've called your bluff. Now if you'll excuse us, we have an endeavor to continue on.
I looked over to the pirate ship. The captain told us nothing, but the crew had a look of terror on their face. I was getting nervous, but I tried to remain calm in Lakey's confidence. After a moment, Lakey turned to us.
I believe they're letting us go, Kaipo, Fitu. Keep a cannon aimed in their direction until we're out of sight. The rest of you get in the cabin until we pull away. Also...
Suddenly there was a great rumbling in the distance. "Earthquake?" I asked, trying to be hopeful and not panic.
Yeah, perhaps,
Lakey said, fairly unsure. He took a breath.
Guys, change of plans.
Lakey told his crew.
Pull the sheet. Let's open her up. Maybe we can outrace any approaching storm. We gotta get moving. Now!
He ordered. Everyone ran around trying to get us moving again. I asked Kaipo on what to do. He told me we needed to get out of here fast. If there was an earthquake or something, we don't want to be hit by a tsunami or anything. Anything that isn't needed, throw overboard. That'll help give us speed, he told me. I looked around and started grabbing boxes and anything that looked heavy and started tossing what I could. Again, I heard the rumbling louder and more frequent. The most unsettling thing was the Uggles. They just stared blankly at us. I tried to get out of my head and just stay focused on the task at hand. Suddenly, the floor just went out from under me. I hit my butt on the ground. I was confused. Did I slip? No, that's not it. Kaipo and Wolf slid around too. What's happening? Panic set in. We were about 50 yards from the pirates, and all I can see was a series of waves. Suddenly, I had a flashback to being a little kid playing in the bathtub. I had a variety of rubber ducks floating around me. I used to stir up the water and watch them bounce around. That was us now. We were the rubber ducks. I clung to the rail. I thought I saw movement in the water. In that moment, I froze. Within about 30 seconds after being knocked to my feet, the pirate ship was no more. I watched in horror as the jaws of the monstrous creature ran right through the middle of the ship from underneath, sending wood splinters, ship and uggles flying into the air. The beast's momentum kept it flying straight up as it burst into the air. The sea dragon was both the most beautiful thing I ever seen and the most terrifying. It actually did fly for a moment, or at least glide, before crashing back down, creating a huge splash that nearly knocked me down. I looked over and watched Lulu trying to dig her claws in on the deck, trying to not get washed overboard, while being battered around by the receding water. Both of us were completely drenched at this point. I snatched her up and held on to her tightly. She looked like a drowned rat. I held her close. She hugged on my arm. "Well, Miss Mika," she said with a sniffle, "if this is the end, I'm glad to have gotten to know ya. You are a sweet, kind, and beautiful young lady," she told me, clinging on my arm. I didn't know what to say, so I just hugged her back. "I love you, Lulu," I told her, and then I sat down, closed my eyes, and expected it to be over with any moment now.